Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we uncover the leadership life hacks that help you to experience breakout performance faster and rocket to success. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbach.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because we have somebody on the show who's really going to give us some greater understandings and frameworks on how to be significantly more effective. Dr. Mary Lippitt's early years were spent in New Haven, Connecticut, Lincoln, Nebraska, Schenectady, New York, Arlington, Virginia, Paris, France, and Bethesda, Maryland. As the daughter of a minister, she moved frequently. These experiences showed her that despite outward differences, we share many commonalities. She formed a deep commitment to finding ways to bring people together and reduce the proclivity to stereotype or dismiss others, since she did not like being labeled or pigeonholed herself. As an adult, Mary has lived in Buffalo, New York, Bartlettsville, Oklahoma, Miami, Florida, Bethesda, Maryland, and now in Tampa, Florida. And over the years, she worked for county government, an international electronics firm, and as a director of a university's Master of Human Resources program. These divergent experiences helped her recognize there is a missing element in the way that we develop our leaders. We traditionally focus on the internal aspects of an individual, their personal style, or their traits, and their competencies. The context or outer realities are largely being overlooked. Her distinctive work fills this gap by helping leaders critically analyze and address their complex and challenging issues. In Mary's book, Situational Mindsets, Targeting What Matters When It Matters, she offers a framework to build effectiveness, engagement, collaboration that produces results. Mary founded Enterprise Management Limited in 1984 and has served public, private, and nonprofit clients interested in boosting critical thinking, the bottom line, and engagement. In the U.S., she has partnered with Bank of America, Lockheed Martin, Marriott, SAIC, the U.S. Department of Energy, and the U.S. Marine Corps. She has also worked in Japan, Turkey, France, and Kuwait. The role Mary enjoys the most is being a grandmother to her grandsons, and she apologizes to her daughter for making the statement, but grandparenthood has all the pleasures without any of the hassles of being a parent. Mary currently lives in Tampa, Florida, between her travel excursions. Mary Lippitt, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
I am. Thank you.
I'm really glad you're here, and I'm really excited to talk about this particular topic. But I think before we get into that, I think it's extremely important for you to explain, who is Kate Hollander?
Kate Hollander is the new head of sales at a printing company in Denver, and she walks into a situation where her staff really would prefer that she would not be there because they would have wanted her job. The sales are declining rapidly. There are silos between the organizations, between sales and production, and the owner is a micromanager. So she has a lot on her plate from the get-go, and the story talks about how she resolves this by delivering results, but also at the same time by making sure that people are engaged and respected. What I'm trying to show in this story of Kate is that you can deliver results and still care about people. Kindness and results are not exclusive to each other. You can do both. And that this is what Kate shows people, how to deliver results, but to work well together.
Well, and to give this even more justice, what you did is really set a very important setting in how Kate actually goes about her work when you talk about her being a medic. So if you could explain that a little bit, I think that's a really good foundational elements to kind of help give people some understanding and context when we get into this discussion about these situational mindsets.
Okay. Kate had been in sales before for a medical device manufacturer, but after 9/11, she chose to serve in the military and serve as a medic. So she's coming off of tours in the Middle East, and she's accepted a job in an industry that she is not familiar with. And so she knows about sales, but her recent experience is really in the Middle East and being a medic rather than a salesperson. So there's a lot of discounting her, stereotypes about, what can she do for us? And, she's younger than we are, and all sorts of other aspects cloud the initial impression of her. What really happens is that there is actually, the restaurant next to her, the printing business, there's an explosion. And then they see her in action and they realize a couple of things. Not only is she very decisive, but she also knows when to step back. She handles, the triage effectively. She directs people clearly and with respect, no panic. But when the emergency medical people arrive, she knows to step back. So this is not someone who is really out to look like I'm the hero. She works well with others, and people realize, well, she does have some skills. Maybe she doesn't know a lot about printing yet. And she has to balance a reality that the owner of the business is pushing her, go, 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 go. And she recognizes that the sales have been going down for a while. So it isn't just a motivational thing. There really are some other aspects. So she uses her honeymoon period to sit back and do some analysis of what it is that's really happening. And in that process, she recognizes that her staff is using a transactional approach. Just get the sale and move on. And she knows that customer service, as you know well, requires a lot more than that. And she talks to the team and helps them come up with the ability to tailor their interactions with their potential clients to make sure that they have a solid sale and one that survives the actual first order to deliver additional orders. And this is really resisted at first because, after all, she doesn't know the printing business. And, why should we change when we've been doing it this way for so long? And so she actually takes a step back, and instead of trying to demand compliance, she actually works with her staff. She goes on sales calls with them. She doesn't try to upstage them, and she shows very early that she is trying to help them because she's identified what their major problems are within the organization, and she tackles those right away to gain some early wins to build the confidence that she really is going to be someone that helps them. So there's a lot going on that she's trying to juggle. And I should mention that she got this job because the vice president in charge of operations, her title is vice president of sales, was someone she worked with in the military. So he was her advocate. And the owner was a little reluctant to hire her. She didn't have the printing experience. And again, he was hit the deck running, nose down to the grindstone kind of guy. And so this strong recommendation is the reason she got the job. But the welcome was a little bit lukewarm.
Well, but you also talk about that and everything that you described there and the competing forces associated with this. So there's, the situations of threat from outside, all the marketplace, pressures. You talk about the internal culture. You talk about, people trying to silo, protect. I mean, all of these different factors that I think everybody can relate to in so many different ways. And so then you start explaining this whole, really how you navigate all of this and how Kate navigates all this. And that is in the situational mindset model. So if you could talk about the 6 components or elements of the situational mindset model, because if you just take them by word, you could potentially be misled. And I think you need to explain them a little bit.
Okay. There are 6 mindsets. And let me just preface my comments by people saying, oh, there's got to be more than that. I will remind people that there are 3 primary colors and we get lots of hues. There are 7 musical notes and we get lots of melodies. So having 6 is not as outrageous as it may seem. So let me identify the 6. The first is I call inventing. It is a focus on what are the new products we should consider. What are the new technologies that we can apply? what are the synergies that we can create internally or externally. So this is a focus on making sure that you are offering the products that are state of the art. And we do know that certain companies really go out of their way to make sure that they are state of the art. Whether it's an Apple or whatever organization it is, having that reputation really is a discriminating factor for many customers. So that's the first one. The second one is very customer oriented, calling it the catalyzing mindset. And in this mindset, we're looking at who are our key customers, how can we increase our customer base, how can we retain our customers, how can we provide them with customer service, what are the emerging customer needs. So both the first two are very external to the organization. They're looking at technology and new ideas. They're looking at the customer, which is obviously external. And those are really what I would call the entrepreneurial stages, the small business getting started. And then there's a shift from the external point of view to looking at the organization. And I know you're very familiar with the fact that organizations can grow real rapidly, but sometimes there's a lot of chaos in that growth. And so the third mindset is called the developing mindset. And it takes a look at how should we be organized? Should we be functional, matrix, geographic, product, whatever? But it's also establishing, what are our policies? What's our pay policy? What's our policy on promotions? It's taking a look at what are the systems that we need? How is information going to flow? What are the decision-making practices we have? So it's what I'll call a macro orientation to how we function. And this is the orientation that says, let's take a look at our goals and make sure that we're doing the right thing rather than just doing things right. So that's the third one. The fourth one is also an internal look, but it's more of a micro look than the infrastructure developing mindset. We call that the performing mindset. And in this mindset, what we take a look at are things like process improvement, quality improvement, workflow analysis, facility layout improvement, return on investment, meeting the budget, vendor management, supply chain management, all of the adjustments, the tweaking, the polishing of a workflow. And of course, that is where we get the efficiency. So this is a very efficiency but quality oriented mindset. So the fifth mindset is still internal, but it's taking a look at the people. It's taking a look, what is the talent we have? Do they have the right competencies? How do we retain them? Do we have good collaboration? Do we have engagement? Do we have a succession plan? Do we have an agile culture? Are we change ready? Are we proud of ourselves? Or do we have a sense of commitment and loyalty? All of the, what I'll broadly call the people and culture aspects. And again, some people tend to discount this area. And I would just like to remind people that Peter Drucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So this, although it may not have the pizzazz of a customer sale, if you don't keep your salespeople, if you don't have the right compensation system for them, if they're not proud of your product, they won't stay with you.
Well, and you call that the protecting mindset. Why protecting?
Because it's protecting what we've achieved in terms of our product, our customers, our infrastructure, and our processes. So it's protecting all that we've built so far. And this is a very proud stage. And in that, every one of these stages has many advantages, but many also disadvantages. And what can happen with protecting is that I'm so proud of what I've got, I won't change. We've perfected everything. Don't mess with success. And the sixth and final mindset is taking a look at the trends that we need to adjust to. It's called the challenging mindset because it's challenging what we've already established. And this is taking a look at new niches, new business opportunities that we may have. It takes a look at maybe new business models. And again, just talking about the printing industry for a second, there was a time when people would say, no one will ever buy a book without being able to go to a store, open the book, and look at it, that nobody will buy the book. And I will say that Amazon has shown how false that assumption was. So the challenging mindset looks at business models, changing the strategy, adapting the strategy. It also takes a look at what are some potential new partnerships that we should go after, what are the kinds of alliances we should make. It's taking a look at positioning the organization for the future. There's a lovely quote from Mark Twain that, if you're on the right track, that's great, but if you just stay there, you're going to get run over. And the challenging mindset is going to tell you, this is, an opportunity to continue to grow. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. What we really can do is take what we've done well, expand it, prepare us. We have to be an organization that sustains itself. So those are the 6. And again, 3 of them are internally focused, the developing, the performing, and the protecting. And 3 of them are really externally focused. The challenging, which is looking at the trends. What does the demographic difference mean for us? What does it mean, that the interest rates are lower than we had anticipated? All those things have to be considered. So the challenging, the inventing, and the catalyzing mindset look more externally. And what's really interesting is most change agents are looking at challenging, inventing, and catalyzing. And we know that the success rate of change is dismal. And that's because the change agents get so excited about their idea that they don't listen to the other mindsets that people have. And again, a mindset is a temporary point of view. It is not genetic. It is not a personal style. It's saying, I'm going to do what I think is most important. And historically, we had something called faster, cheaper, and better. And we would say, do it faster, and then it will obviously be cheaper. No, not necessarily. So this framework enlarges that faster, cheaper, better into a more comprehensive analysis.
But I think you bring up a really interesting point, right? So I have these 6 elements, and as you were explaining them, I started thinking about all these different subsets. So I'm like, okay, an organization, and then if you start even thinking about that from a champion perspective, they can't focus on everything. It's just not possible. The whole, multitasking myth is quite true. While we have to do a lot of things, it doesn't mean that we can focus on a lot of things. So when you start talking about choosing which mindset, how do you go about doing that?
Well, the first thing is you have to do a comprehensive analysis of your situation. And the title of the book is talking about mindset, which is a present orientation. What am I facing now? But instead of having it be a mindset about myself and my own capabilities, it's doing an awareness of the actual situation that I'm confronting. And so I would love to do 6 things simultaneously, but I know that I can't, text and drive. So I have to become aware of my limitations. And that's not a bad thing, because when I focus, I can achieve something. If I keep trying to juggle 6 things, I'll make very poor decisions. I haven't really analyzed everything. And I'll come across as someone who is a chameleon. First she wants this, then she wants that kind of thing. So we have to make choices, but those choices are not permanent. I think people resisted a choice because they thought, okay, this is going to be a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. And what we have now is the speed of change is coming so fast that we can do one priority at a time, complete it, and move on to another. There was a lovely story about the fact that if you're driving a car, you adjust your position, your hands, your eyes every 9 seconds. And this is the rate of change. And change is probable, pervasive, problematic, and promising. So, the change is where we're going to have new opportunities, but we may not like the process of having to go through that change, but we're going to have to be successful.
Well, and I think as you said that, there's one thing for me that I think kind of stands out is that I would rather be proactive and rather it be voluntary than be forced.
Yes, because by the time I'm being forced, I have fewer options. As long as I'm proactive, I have more to choose from.
That's funny that you say that. My daughter right now is in high school and she's a junior. I'm like, you need to start looking at schools. I said, because if you don't do that, because she's also an athlete, I said, you have to start creating relationships that you really should have already been building if you want a roster spot. because it's all about relationships these days. I mean, they look at athleticism and, athletic abilities, but they also want to make sure they're finding a right cultural fit. It's become so darn important. You're going to be left with whatever the scraps are if you don't get moving.
And one of the things she should be considering is getting tapes of her in action. I mean, there are things that she could do now to help her, identify the coaches that she might want to send information to, and maybe even look at those where she can get on the roster, and maybe also look at those where she could get a scholarship. So, I mean,
yeah.
It looks like it's far off to somebody, but there are things we can do now to position ourselves well for the future.
That's right. And that's just exactly what we're talking about as far as, really being able to, okay, now I understand this framework. And then I need to go about the choosing process, but I need to master this. I mean, because I need to be proactive with it. I cannot be reactive. I'm going to lose choices and options. I'm going to be the one being disrupted instead of being the disruptor. And so I have to master it. So now to master it, you talk about really two key elements. There's probably more, and if they are, please explain them. But you talk about focal points and guiding questions. Explain that.
Well, I think what I would say is the guiding questions are helping us identify all the information first. Because what happens is that sometimes we have an idea, but we don't really test it out. Is this really the best option I have? So the questions actually become a checklist to make sure I've collected the data from everyone. And again, one of my assumptions is that leadership today is about asking the right questions. It's not about having all the right answers, because no one has all the right answers. The world is too complex. So getting the questions surfaces the data, so then I can evaluate it and set my priority or the focal point. But then I can also communicate that focal point by explaining exactly why this is the most important thing to tackle at this point in time.
Well, I think the importance here too is that, okay, so I need to learn this framework. I need to start working on mastering this framework, because I do have to decide faster. And I can't just decide based off of what I've known or even what others are doing. Because if I look at these situations, there's that unique DNA that starts actually revealing itself. And that's what I have to work with.
Correct. I think the only thing I would say is that I have to keep reminding people that a mindset is a very temporary thing. So just to say it's following what the current priority or issue is, but it isn't a permanent label of what I will always choose. You mentioned that I lived in Buffalo, New York, and it's in a hurricane or in Florida or a blizzard in Buffalo, New York, you don't care what the background, whether somebody graduated from in engineering or someone graduated in art. If they can help you get out of the storm, you say thank you. So the focal point is important, because that creates the common ground. That creates the teamwork that makes things happen. And it can be a very temporary thing. I mean, if I'm in a blizzard and I can't even open my car door because it's frozen, and somebody tells me how to do it, I'm thankful, but I've learned it, I'll move on. So I'm talking about a mindset as a very, very temporary assessment of what is most important to do. But that temporary assessment is going to help me set the priority, which means I can focus and achieve the results.
Yeah, we have to have that built-in agility, right? Okay, so you all, through our discussion here, used many different quotes, and those are absolutely focal points. They point us in the right direction, and we really, look at those on the Fast Leader Show and share them a lot. So is there one or two, they're all riddled throughout your book. You've mentioned a few, but is there kind of one or two that stand out for you as focal points?
Well, I think there's one from Ben Franklin I like, that just something like, if you don't think creatively, it's like giving up your future, your life. I mean, thinking is critical to our life, and it gets a bad name, particularly the term critical thinking, because it sounds like I have to be a cynic, or I have to be, poking somebody and pointing out shortfalls. But really, critical thinking, it could be as subtle as, would you want me to investigate this aspect of this? And people will say yes. So you can be very comprehensive in your analysis without being, a naysayer or a problem child kind of thing.
It's interesting that you say that. I mean, a lot of people may say, well, it's just semantics, but semantics are critically important. I'm sorry. They give us context and they give us understanding. It's like we've vilified so many different words in our society that, if we would have used them just 100 years ago, would have had a totally different, context. I often refer to the one of ignorant. And if you look it up, it just says innocent, unknowing. But yet, if anything is labeled as ignorant, it is vilified. And that's just unfortunate. Now, when we start talking about these transformations, these transitions, these learnings and all that stuff, I mean, we talk about getting over the hump on the show. And those personal stories of when we had those experiences can be so helpful for others. I just was telling my daughter the other day, I said, even though you may not want to hear my stories, if you actually were to listen, seeing that we're very similar in the way that we go about thinking, maybe you'll gain some insight for yourself, to choose a better path. Of course, she doesn't want to hear that from Dad, but is there a time where you've gotten over the hump that you can share?
Yes. Early in my career, I thought rational analysis would always win the day. And I was trying to influence up the chain of command, and I got rejected. And I couldn't believe it. I was dumbfounded. And it wasn't until I got a task. This was a large organization. We had about 30,000 employees. And I got tasked with writing the head executive's monthly column to the employees. And so I got to sit down and talk with him. And we saw things very differently as what was a priority. And how we analyzed it was very different. Now, if you're writing the top executive, you got to adjust your thinking to his point of view. Obviously, after I write something, he's going to review it, he's going to edit it. He would rather not have to edit it heavily. So I had to start opening my own mind. I have to tell you, I was convinced sometimes that I had more answers than I really had. And I thought I saw things more clearly than I really did. There's a comment, what you see is not all there is. And that was my opening to begin to recognize I didn't see everything. And all the facts that I thought I had many gaps, but I never had collected them. So that exercise of writing for him really showed me how differently people thought. And again, we tend in our society to say, if you think differently from me, you're wrong. And what I realized was, when you think differently from me, you help me. You help me. I benefit from these differences. And so instead of labeling somebody right or wrong, what can I learn? How do they see reality? What am I missing? And, there's lots of stories about, witnesses to car accidents. And, everybody saw the same accident, but they recall different things. That's what we have to recognize. In our organizations, people are going to focus on different things. Some will get them right, some will get them wrong, but we've got to at least collect them before we can evaluate them. And that was how I started to realize there really was great wisdom that I was missing. And so I really learned the importance of asking more questions rather than asking just a couple and jumping into my conclusions, which I was very sure I was right. This is basically the confirmation bias. I collected the information that supported my point of view. And sometimes I remind people that at one point in time, bankers said you could give a 95% mortgage because home prices never go down more than 5%. That was a false assumption. And so I'm beginning to become, maybe it's more humble because I'm realizing I don't have all the information, but I also realize that no one does. And so this is why we need to work together. And so I think we could work together to produce results, but we also, when we work together, we show respect for another person. We show that we value them, and we therefore engage them, and we get the kind of collaboration and teamwork that makes our jobs very satisfying.
Well, the only way that it does that, though, Mary, is because if we have, very useful frameworks, because otherwise all of that diversity and different perspectives are going to not enable us to move forward. And that's why I'm really glad that you've actually shared these situational mindset models and everything else that goes with it. So when I start looking at that and looking at the, where you've been, the work that you've done, and the work that you're still yet to do, when I start thinking about some of the goals you have, I'd like to hear one. What is one goal that you have?
I would like to expand our definition of leadership to include making sure that we balance the short and the long term and the ability to gain active support from others. I think that our focal point of leadership has become a little too narrow. And I value everything we've done in the past. My uncle Ronald Lippitt with Kurt Lewin did the very first leadership study in 1938. It was called the Lewin-Lippitt-White study. And they came up with laissez-faire leadership and all that. And I really think everything that we've done in leadership has been fantastic, whether it's group dynamics, whether it's emotional intelligence, whether it's style, whatever else. But I think we've left out our situational ability to deliver the best for the organization. So I really would like to expand how we look at leadership.
And this world of customer-centric transformation and, a digital transformation and all of that, this type of leadership is really vital to not just the success of an organization, but the existence of an organization. And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that gives you a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement along with integrated activities that will improve employee engagement and leadership skills in everyone. Using this award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and loyal employees who have great work relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about an Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Mary, the Hump Day Hoedown is a part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Mary Lippitt, are you ready to hoedown?
I am.
All right. So what is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
I like so much to look at new ideas that sometimes I forget the priority of following through with my immediate goal. So I can become distracted, and I need to remember, again, what is my priority today?
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Listen, persevere, and respect others.
What do you believe is one of your secrets that helps you contribute to your success?
I think I've developed the ability to ask good questions.
And what is one of your tools that helps you lead in business or life?
I use a situational mindset checklist. It's basically reminding me what questions I need to ask, and those questions could be tailored to the level of the organization or the type of industry. So that really helps me. And I know that some people discount the importance of a checklist, but I'll say lawyers, doctors, pilots, and Santa Claus use checklists.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our Legion? And it could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put a link to Situational Mindsets on your show notes page as well.
Well, I think that Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow is absolutely a fantastic book. And I also will give a shout out to The Art of War by Sun Tzu many, many years ago, which again talked about the importance of learning the lay of the ground. And that's what I'm talking about with situationals, concepts.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Mary Lippitt. Okay, Mary, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you've been given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you can take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take it all. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I would take back the ability to say, I do not know. And that leads to my willingness to ask the questions and, again, engage people and make a better decision. I think for a while thought I do not know was demeaning of me, when I now realize it is showing the fact that I understand the complexity of this world.
Mary, I had fun with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
They can connect with me at mary@situationalmindsets.com or www.situationalmindsets.com.
Mary Lippitt, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.